When it comes to pop music, maintaining a flawless streak of hits isn't easy, but a select few artists have managed to dominate the charts for years without a single misstep. In this video, we'll look at 10 of the longest dominant eras without a flop. Rihanna burst onto the scene in 2005 with her debut single Ponder Replay, and from that moment, it was clear that she was destined for superstardom. Over the next decade, she became a hit machine, releasing album after album filled with chart toppers like Umbrella, Disturbia, Rude Boy, and We Found Love. Her ability to blend genres, whether it's pop, R&B, reggae, or dance music, made her a chameleon that appeals to a wide range of audiences. By the time Good Girl Gone Bad arrived in 2007, she had cemented her status as one of pop's leading ladies. From 2009 to 2016, Rihanna was virtually untouchable. Her albums Rated R, Loud, Talk That Talk, and Unapologetic spawned era-defining hits like Diamonds, Only Girl in the World, Work, and Stay. What set Rihanna apart was her consistency. Every year brought a new batch of smash hits, ensuring she stayed at the forefront of pop music. Her ability to adapt to trends made her a cultural icon. By the time she released Anti in 2016, she had accumulated 14 #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. She has been non-existent in the music scene for years now, but her legendary hits still keep her relevant, and her run from 2005 to 2016 is one of the most dominant in music history. Whitney Houston. Whitney's career began with an explosive debut with her self-titled album in 1985. Off the gate, she delivered global hits like How Will I Know and Greatest Love of All, cementing her as a chart topper. By 1987, her sophomore album Whitney, making her the first female artist to debut on #1 on the Billboard 200. Hits like I Wanna Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me and Then We Almost Have It All kept her flawless streak going. The 90s only solidified her dominance. In 1992, the Bodyguard soundtrack became a cultural phenomenon, selling over 45 million copies worldwide, with I Will Always Love You holding the #1 spot for an amazing 14 weeks. Through the mid-90s, Whitney was involved in a lot of soundtracks, with Waiting to Excel and The Preacher's Wife soundtracks spawning hits, continuing her momentum. She remained untouchable for over a decade. Then her 1998 album, My Love Is Your Love, continued her commercial streak, even though it was a slight decline in sales compared to her earlier work. By the early 2000s, personal struggles overshadowed her career, but her legendary streak from 1985 to the late 90s remains one of the most impressive in pop history. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's dominance began with the release of Off the Wall in 1979, marking his transition from a child star to an adult. Thriller became the best-selling album of all time, including all-time hits like Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller. From groundbreaking music videos to record-breaking tours, the era cemented him as the king of pop. The streak continued with Bad in 1987, which produced a staggering 5 Billboard Hot 100 #1 singles, which is still a record by the way, including Man in the Mirror and the title track. MJ became white and conquered the world. By the early 90s, he maintained his popularity with Dangerous, spawning hits like Black or White and Remember the Time. The album continued his global dominance. Even his story, Past, Present, and Future, in 1995, maintained his winning streak, delivering hits like You Are Not Alone and Scream. Mike's golden era finally began to wane with Invincible in 2001. While the album debuted on #1 and featured standout tracks like You Rock My World, it failed to sustain the same level of cultural relevance. But Michael's run from 1979 to 1995 remains one of the longest, most dominant eras in pop history. Janet Jackson. Janet's reign began with Control in 1986. After dropping 2 albums that didn't really gain traction, it redefined her career and set a new standard for female pop stars. Breaking free from the shadow of her famous family, Janet was able to craft her unique sound. Singles like Nasty and When I Think of You dominated the charts, while the album established her as a force to be reckoned with. The follow-up, Rhythm Nation 1814 in 1989, was even more ambitious. Featuring socially conscious themes, it produced several top 5 hits and 4 #1s, including Miss You Much, Escapade, Black Cat, and Love Will Never Do Without You. Her streak continued into the 90s with her fifth studio album Janet in 1993, which saw her embrace a different image. Hits like That's the Way Love Goes and If topped the charts, while her acting debut in Poetic Justice was legendary. Janet pushed the boundaries once again with The Velvet Rope in 1997. It spawned hits like Together Again and I Get Lonely, cementing her position as a pop icon. Her last #1 hits were Doesn't Really Matter in 2000 and All For You in 2001. Janet's flawless run faced this major hiccup with Demeter Joe in 2004. The infamous Super Bowl controversy overshadowed the album's release, leading to her being blackballed. While the album was good, its commercial performance made it a flop, marking the end of her dominant era. By the 2010s, she got into her legacy artist stage. However, from 1986 to 2001, Janet reigned as one of the most consistent chart toppers in pop history. Eminem's rise began in 1999 with the Slim Shady LP. It propelled him from underground rapper to mainstream star. Songs like My Name Is and Guilty Conscience introduced his dark humor and his sharp lyrical ability, winning him his first Grammy. He quickly followed it up with the Marshall Mathers LP in 2000, an era-defining album that included hits like Stan and The Real Slim Shady. It has managed to sell 36 million units to date. He was on a roll, following it up with The Eminem Show in 2002 and Encore in 2004, continuing his streak of multi-platinum albums. He also diversified his dominance by contributing to the success of his group D12 and mentoring 50 Cent. After a hiatus dealing with addiction, Eminem returned with Relapse in 2009, which despite polarizing reviews, maintained his commercial dominance. However, it was 2010's Recovery that brought him back to critical and chart success, with chart-topping hits like Love the Way You Lie and Not Afraid. The Marshall Mathers LP in 2013 was a bit of a drop-off, but it extended his reign, featuring massive hits like The Monster and Rap God. Eminem's flawless run began to falter after that album, with his 2017 album Revival receiving huge backlash, making it his first major flop. Despite the stumble, Eminem's 1999 to 2013 streak remains one of the most impressive runs in music history. As no artist has dominated rap for so long, he still sells a lot of records, close to 3 decades into his career. Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey's long run started with her debut in 1990. Her first single, Vision of Love, shot straight to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, marking the beginning of a record-breaking streak. Between 1990 and 2001, she racked up an amazing 15 #1 singles in the US, cementing her as the queen of the Hot 100. Hits like Hero, Fantasy, and Always Be My Baby became defining moments in pop music. Mariah dominated the charts for a long time, creating timeless anthems that defined the 90s. Her Christmas album Merry Christmas in 1994 introduced the all-time holiday classic All I Want for Christmas Is You, which finally hit #1 in 2021 and comes back to the top each year as it continues to dominate streaming platforms decades later. As the 2000s began, she pivoted into a more experimental sound with her Rainbow album in 1999, while still securing hits like Heartbreaker. However, 2001 marked her first notable misstep with the release of Glitter, an album tied with the hated movie of the same name. While songs like Loverboy gained some traction, the project was widely considered a flop, especially compared to her past dominance. The album's underwhelming performance marked the end of Mariah's decade-long streak of dropping nothing but hits. Her golden era. She rebounded to the top with her 2005 comeback album The Emancipation of Mimi. Madonna. Madonna's dominance began with her self-titled debut album in 1983, which introduced her to the world. But it was her second album, Like a Virgin, a year later, that truly started her reign. With songs like Material Girl and the title track, Madonna became a chart topper. Over the next decade, she evolved into the queen of pop, delivering hit after hit, with albums like True Blue in 1986, Like a Prayer in 1989, and Erotica in 1992. Her ability to adapt her image and sound to fit the moment ensured she stayed at the forefront of pop culture. Her 90s were marked by bold experimentation. Albums like Bedtime Stories in 1994 and Ray of Light in 1998 showed her willingness to push boundaries. while maintaining commercial success. Her reinvention with Ray of Light earned her critical acclaim and several Grammy Awards. Even as she aged, her popularity remained, as her latest #1 hit came in 2000 with Music. Madonna's first flop came in 2003 with American Life. The album failed to produce major hits, despite a strong promotional push. Over the years, she has continued to release music and remain relevant, but American Life marked the end of her untouchable era. Her streak from 1984 to 2001 was historic, making her a true icon. Taylor Swift. Taylor began her journey when she released her self-titled debut album in 2006, which laid the groundwork. But it was her 2008 album Fearless that catapulted her to superstardom. The album featured hits like Love Story and You Belong With Me, earning her her first Album of the Year Grammy. In 2010, she released the follow-up Speak Now. The album debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200, selling more than 1 million copies in its first week. By 2012, Taylor has started dabbling in pop music with Red, which featured huge singles like We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together and I Knew You Were Trouble. The album was a commercial success, debuting on #1 on the Billboard 200, selling over 1.2 million copies in its first week. In 2014, Taylor made her full pivot into pop music with 1989, The Pop Bible. The album featured 3 chart-topping hits, Shake It Off, Blank Space, and Bad Blood. It was a critical and commercial success, selling over 40 million copies worldwide to date. Following the success of 1989, she followed it up with Reputation in 2017. The album debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200, selling over 1.2 million copies in its first week. It has now been certified 3 times platinum by the RIAA. In 2019, she released Lover, which debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 867,000 copies in its first week. Even though it was a slight decline, it continued her momentum. In 2020, she made a risky pivot into indie folk, releasing Folklore and Evermore back-to-back, both debuting on #1 on the Billboard 200. The risk paid off, and the album started a new era of domination. In 2022, she released Midnights, which debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200, selling more than 1.5 million units in its first week and breaking a lot of streaming records. Around this era, she also started releasing her re-recorded albums, all of which became huge commercial successes. In 2024, Taylor released her latest album, The Tortured Poets Department. With her best-selling albums and record-breaking tours, Taylor has been dominating the charts since her breakthrough way back in 2008. She has only increased in popularity, and we'll have to wait and see if she will ever fall off. Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake's golden era began in 2003 when he transitioned from boy band superstar to a solo icon. With his debut album Justified, songs like Cry Me a River and Rock Your Body not only dominated the charts, but also marked his evolution into a mature R&B-driven artist. The album's success earned him Grammy Awards and solidified his spot as one of the most exciting solo acts of the early 2000s. He followed this up with Future Sex Love Sounds in 2006, which catapulted him into even greater heights. The album redefined pop and R&B with hits like Sexy Back, My Love, and What Goes Around Comes Around, all hitting #1. After focusing on acting for much of the early 2010s, JT came back with the 2020 Experience in 2013. The album was a huge success, selling 968,000 copies in its first week and spawning hits like Suit and Tie and Mirrors. His first major stumble came in 2018 with Man of the Woods. After a 5-year hiatus, he released the album following underwhelming singles like Filthy and Supplies. While it debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200, it quickly fell off the charts and became his first flop, ending his unbroken run of dominance. Still, JT's decade-long streak from 2003 to around 2014 is one of the longest dominant eras in pop music. Beyoncé. Beyoncé was already a star as the lead singer of Destiny's Child, but her solo era started with the release of Dangerously in Love in 2003. The album debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200 and featured hits like Crazy in Love and Baby Boy, both of which topped the Billboard Hot 100. The album solidified her as a solo artist and earned her 5 Grammy Awards. In 2006, she released B-Day, which continued her streak of commercial success. The album debuted on #1, selling more than 500,000 copies in its first week. Singles like Irreplaceable and Deja Vu dominated the charts, with the album now being certified 5 times platinum by the RIAA. Beyoncé's 2008 album I Am Sasha Fierce marked a significant evolution in her musical style. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and produced chart-topping singles like Single Ladies, Put a Ring on It, and Halo. It has now been certified 7 times platinum in the US. In 2011, she released 4, an album that showcased a more mature sound and received critical acclaim. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, but was considered a slight decline, as it didn't spawn any huge hits. Beyoncé's 2013 self-titled album was released without any prior announcement and made history, debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200. The album had a huge impact on pop music. In 2016, she released Lemonade, one of the most critically acclaimed albums of all time. Beyoncé had transitioned into her album era, as she was no longer interested in having chart-topping singles, rather full bodies of work that stand the test of time. She is still at the top of her craft, with her latest albums Renaissance in 2022 and Cowboy Carter in 2024 selling a lot of records. You can argue Beyoncé's dominant era is still going on, as she is still at the top of the game, close to 3 decades into her career. Which long dominant eras did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.